Hello, everybody. Well, I'm going to explain a little bit my process, my ideas, my problems, and my solutions when I design using creative coding animations. So the main title of the presentation is The Aesthetics of the Simulacrum, the Simulacra, but the real thing is that I'm going to answer the question how I became a gardener of audiovisual artifacts in generative environments. I think my main difference is that I use simulation to produce my animation, so I'm going to explain a little bit this approach. I use creative coding because it's one of my approaches to creating animations, music. So it's a way that I can merge three areas that I really love: science, technology, and art. It's very useful because you can simulate many things, and these things don't spend resources, don't spend materials. It's just a simulation, and you take the good outputs of these simulations to produce the final results. So I really get inspired by nature. All my experiments, my films, I take ideas from nature. I focus on replacing the shapes that produce nature in many ways. I take notes about the different motions and movements that we can find in nature. I also focus on the colors that we can find in nature and how they evolve along the time, along the stations of and the weather. And I'm not a musician, but I try to use innovative ways to produce music and sounds using data, interaction, and, well, experiments. So I'm going to show you different outputs. When I started, I focused on designing, on creating, using code, but in the beginning, I didn't animate this. I didn't feel so confident to animate, but I started creating different outputs like this, really inspiration from the nature. So I tried to focus on shapes, on colors, on compositions, and then I like to use organicity in my output. So I try to not just using geometry, using also the organic outputs that are more like nature, like this one. I also focus on the structure of the compositions in nature. So I try to simulate, sometimes reinterpret and change a little bit using randomness or noise. In many times I use physics, attraction and repulsion forces to simulate many different outputs like this one. In the same way, I like to reconstruct a structure that we can find in nature, for example, in leaves. So, but I change a little bit. And inspiration sometimes comes from the daily routines. This is inspired in my hometown. In the winter, the mornings are very foggy. So I try to simulate these weather conditions in my outputs. And later I started to animate things. For me, it was important to trace the motion, so recording how things move and they stop, they change their orientation, their position, and many things. How they disappear or come back. Another important thing in my motion studies is that I use color to suggest or to help to motion. So combining color and motion, it's very important, and I focus really in this collaboration between color and motion. Another important thing for me is that the geometric operations, intersection, union, difference, that can create these kind of patterns that remember for the rainy days or the interaction between just lines and colors, but they create special patterns that are interesting for me. And, well, I'm a digital maker, so I use artifacts and techniques that are really approach to digital technologies. So pixelization, rasterization are present in my work. So in the same way, colors suggest motion, and we can reinforce the idea of motion using, in this case, gradients, geometric operations, waves, and many of these things you'll find in my work. I also search for organicity and motion and movement that are not always perfect. There are some kind of unsynchronicity. They are not synchronous. They are changing in a rare way. So in this speech, I'm going to speak about my key elements in my work. Revisiting my work in these last 15, 20 years, I found out that my key elements are these four. I use simulation for creating my artworks. I use an experimental approach, trying to, every time is a different approach, is a different research, different tools. I use microcoloral animation. That means that I use tiny elements, abstract elements in collaboration to suggest a global message. And in my artwork, I try to use not a approach really geometric or not really organic. I try to use a symbiosis between organic and geometric. This is experimental research, so every time I do, a different output can be found. So I start, but I don't know the path I'm going to follow. So sometimes it's a surprise, sometimes it's a happy accident, sometimes it's a problem. So I try to solve these things using simulation. My approach is not to drawing directly, it's not animating objects directly, it's defining an environment with rules, with physics properties, with chemical reactions, with choices and stochastic decisions. And I compose in this environment objects and abstract elements, and the interrelationships between them and the environment produce the visual and the sound output. For example, this is an environment with many agents. I'm going to speak about this later. So these are tiny elements with relationships, with forces. These are not so tiny, but different objects that move according to a set of rules in this environment. At the end, the process of simulation, it's a selection of choices, parameters, and code. It just, I feel a gardener selecting the right seeds, the right decisions to produce a good outcome. It's like Mendel selecting the C piece to produce the right plants, the best selection. So that's the idea. I test many parameters, many choices, and the best outputs, I follow this path. For example, this is an example. All these tiny particles are performing the same rules, but they have a different starting point, a little, very different starting point. So the final output after 2-3 seconds, it's quite different. They move in different positions. And these are the same algorithm to generate different patterns, different lines, but you can see different outputs using different parameters, different values. I like experimentation. Maybe you know Sister Corita Kent. She defined 10 rules for experimentation for teachers, artists, and creators. I just take 2 of these 10 rules. Rule number 4, consider everything an experiment. I approach all my works trying to do an experiment. This removes the pressure for the artist, so it's an experiment. Don't worry about the output. It's just only make. That's the idea. John Cage, the musician and artist, later popularized these 10 rules, but the original was Sister Corita Kent. I'm going to speak about 6 of my works. You can see that the approach is different. Most of the occasions I use tiny things, tiny abstract things, circles, triangles, dots, lines, or a combination of dots and lines. So the approach is very minimalistic. I work in a micro level. So in every project, I develop and research different algorithms, agents, recursive subdivision, attractors, cosine gradients, or space colonization algorithms. It's a previous research, and then when you are happy with the outputs and the parameters and the choices of the system, of the simulation, you can produce the final output. And I like to get inspired by different material and physical arts. For example, kinetic, mosaic, gardening, graffiti, or tapestry are very useful to get inspiration. I try to use different arts categories, so the final output is different from one project to another. About microcorel animation, I'm using just tiny particles, just tiny objects to produce a global message. So for me it's important. These are all tiny rectangles with gradients, but altogether can emit a powerful message. The same, these are just lines that they grow in a different way with a different color, but if you use a interesting composition, you have a powerful message. Or these are just tiny emojis, symbols. So, but collecting and composing and changing using noise or different random situations, you get something more powerful. And the other key element in my works is that it's not purely geometric or purely organic. I like to combine these things. So when my output is too geometric, I try to organize, I try to distort, I try to deform. So When the output is geometric, maybe I fill the areas with scratches, animations, or when the output is too geometric, is too organic, I try to apply boundaries to contain the organicity of nature in geometry. So, right, I'm going to start with different works. The first work is AAAC, an autonomous agent choreo. I like to say that it started underwater in summer morning in a bay in the west coast of Majorca. I was diving and I was hypnotized by the beauty and the flow of a sea anemone in a reef. In the same week, I watched on the TV a choreographic military parade, and in my head, I merged these two ideas, and I asked myself, oh, maybe it could be interesting to try to design a choreography for anemones, but using a strict geometric animation. So this was the idea. I needed an algorithm to generate this. I researched many different options. At the end, I choose using autonomous agents. Autonomous agents are a model for simulation that is very useful to simulate behaviors of swarms and flock of birds and animals in a collective. That was the algorithm. The aesthetic that I wanted to provide was related to kinetic art. I love the art of Julio Leparc and how with color, with composition, with tiny dots, you can suggest motion, vibration. So that was the objective, the goal. Using agents, try to provide and get this kind of emotion. So that's a frame of the movie, of the film. So that's the idea. With these are tiny circles, moving using a simulation, using agents, trying to provide this kind of color and motion. How I achieve the motion, okay? So the idea to move all the agents using this choreography was to use a vector field. A vector field is just this. You have many different tiles. Every tile has a direction. So the agent follows the direction that the tile is on. So they move according to that direction. So I designed many vector fields, but the problem, obviously, is that simulation is a wild horse. You can't control everything. So sometimes the vector field designed produced a motion, an ugly motion, not a desired motion. For example, here you can see that these agents start covering all the stage, but past 2-3 seconds, they create holes. And I didn't want that. I wanted that all the time, all the stage, all the screen was covered by agents. So I designed 100 vector fields with different orientations, with different outputs, and I tested most of them, and I curated just only the vector fields that produced a good output from my point of view. So here you can see on the left, the representation of the vector field and the output. How I decided the color? Well, I tried many different ideas. At the end, the best idea was the simple idea. Just the color changed depending on the angle of the motion of the agent. So using the angular motion, the angular velocity, and the angular of every agent, you can change the color. So all the agents in the same direction has the same color at the end. How was sound? I wanted that the sound was repetitive, but not monotonous. That's quite difficult. But I tried a stochastic approach inspired by Xenakis, the musician and architect. So let's play just a little bit. So the idea is chords repeat, but sometimes they change randomly, so it's not so monotonous. That's the idea. So let's continue with the next project. Is a project related to visual poetry. It started as a collaboration with a pop music band from my hometown, a band called Verni. They composed a song based on a poem from a Majorcan writer, Miguel Riera. This is Catalan, this is my mother tongue, and I wanted to use words that Catalan is a minority language, so it's important for me to restore and preserve this kind of language. So this poem speaks about the awakened dreams. So when you are the first moment when you awake, so maybe you remember the dreams that you dreamed that night. So I wanted a minimalistic approach, so I used the idea that, well, the first hours of the day, the light enters through the blinds. In Majorca, the blinds, they produce this kind of light and shadows. I wanted to also produce a relationship with just something material, so I wanted to produce an audio reactive animation, but as Sune said yesterday, pop music is quite difficult to extract information for animation because it's quite plain. So I added some kind of noise inspired in the mountains, in the relief. And I also wanted to add a touch of culture that in my culture, many of the blankets of the beds, they have embroidery. So you can see in the film that there are some words that simulate this appearance and disappearance of words from the poem. So the animation is based on the data of the song using a technique, programming technique is called fast Fourier transform, getting the data and of the frequencies of the sound, and you can use it to animate the different things in your movie. Okay, the next is also a collaboration with the music composer and producer Daniele Carmosino. He provided me a song, well, a list of songs, and I choose one of the most experimental. Is a song where she created a crispy and rhythmic sound using tissue paper between the strings of the keyboard and the keys and the hammers in the piano. And he also added a recording of an opera singer and many different experimental approaches. So music is the division of time in musical events, such as chords, notes, or silences. So I wanted to approach the visuals the same way. So I thought that it would be nice that the animation, the visuals would be the division of a space in many different visual and objects. So I researched about the continuum and the space-time, the concept, the philosophical and physics concept, and I arrived to this quote by the teacher, the mathematician teacher of Einstein, where space and time are realities that are a union. They are not independent. So I also found Zeno's paradox, the philosopher, talking about Achilles and the turtle, and how Achilles is never reaching the turtle because we always can divide the space between them. So aesthetically, I wanted to make a tribute to Eduardo Paolozzi, and his mosaics is a way of dividing the wall in different small objects and small rectangles or squares. For example, you can see a little bit the inspiration here. So I wanted to move these things. So the animation of things is related to the objects that humans we use to count and control time, like clocks, calendars, scroll bars, and many things. Another inspiration art was tapestry, and I get really inspired by Gunther Stolz and her colleagues in the Bauhaus school. So here you can see the inspiration and the animation. It's based on this tapestry idea. Basically, the algorithm used is the subdivision of a space. So before programming the algorithm, I researched many different ways to divide polygons. And then I code a recursive program to subdivide the space in many polygons. And the sound is used here for changing the color a little bit. So I wanted to use audio reactive colors, so I chosen different color palettes, and the volume and the fast Fourier transform data is used to change for a lighter or a darker color using the original palette. So let's play so you can see. This is just using volume. But you can use the fast Fourier transform in the same way, just changing the colors matched with the band of the fast Fourier transform. And this is the kind of animation that I wanted to use. Very simple, but related to the elements that we use as humans to count the time. just calendars, clocks, progress bars, and many things. And I also wanted to use something related to animals, in this case bees, but I read about they measure time in some way, collecting the nectar in the cells that the queen is nearby. So, well, it was an idea to animate using also the time perceived by animals. So the next project I'm going to talk about is Sandbox. Is the idea of creating a generative garden, simulating the different seasons in related to Japanese gardens, sand gardens. So this is a very simulated project where there are different characters, stones, holes, sand, and the gardener. Every one of them has a function in this emergent ecosystem. So the idea is every one of them has a function, a form, physical properties. Someone they have visual, someone they have sound. So in this case, stones are negative attractors or repellers, and holes are positive attractors. So particles, sand, move following this kind of physics rules. So they produce this kind of animation. So depending on the composition created by the gardener, the artist, and the computer, the output and the simulation is quite different. Here, no colors, no oscillations, just the basic algorithm is this. Particles move according to repellers and attractors. So the next film is Dawn and Dusk. It's an speculative and imaginary interpretation of two magical moments of the day, the sunset and the sunrise, dawn and dusk. So I researched many things about light. So light has a dual nature. Light is particles and waves. So I divided the piece in two parts. The dawn is plenty of particles, and the down I used many waves. I get inspired by graffiti, gestual painting, so for me it was important to trace the light and the waves using some kind of motion inspired by graffiti, and also by long exposure photography. When I did the research of this project, I found out many posters explaining about light and properties, but these were really geometric, really cold aesthetically. So in this project, I wanted to create something not so cold, and not so cold just in colors, not so cold in geometry. So I irregularize all the shapes. So lines, circles, triangles, all were irregularized using randomness and noise, and dividing the different vertex of the shapes and moving a little bit. So that was important for me. So the original shape, it's curved and irregularized a little bit, so it's not so cold. So the shape, if you put a shape in your hand, you feel warm. If this, in this case, curved and irregularized. About color. The previous projects I did, color was plain and solid, so I wanted to explore the use of gradients. I thought that gradients could be a nice idea because dawn and dusk are plenty of gradients in the sky. So I checked many color systems, RGB, hue, saturation, and brightness, and many ways to represent color. At the end, I found out the system of cosine gradients that matched very well with the idea of waves. So using cosine gradients, we have a wave representing every R and G and B, and also opacity. So you can see that different waves produce a different gradient, and was really nice to use in animation. So just changing the wave, you get different gradient and color. And I wanted to use the graffiti idea that a graffiti artist paint covering all the wall, but using randomness is quite difficult because you normally repeat spots. So I didn't want to repeat the spots, so I tried not to repeat paths. So, and curving the trajectories using behaviour curves. So you can see the curves in the, and the waves in the project are from this idea and this technique. And let's with the last project. Is a project that I finished the visuals last week. So, and I'm starting to designing the music, and so I'm going to explain a little bit about the process of designing music. Relum is a word in Catalan related to a bunch of roots, and it's a project about space colonization. It started also when I was reading a book about Suzanne Simard. She's a teacher and biologist from Canada. Her book, Finding the Mother Tree, was really inspiring, talking about experiments and radioactivity, using radioactivity to check if communication between trees from different species was possible or not. I chosen roots because I think roots has a component of suggestion of they are not visible, so it's more poetic talking about roots than branches. And I wanted to explore how roots could colonize different geometric shapes. So I explored many algorithms related to how plants colonize a space. They have different parameters, they have different choices, so the output is quite difficult. I spent almost a year observing different ways to colonize a space, just using dots, or using lines with different colors depending on the section or area. Different algorithms produce different outputs. Some outputs more geometric, other more organic. And this project started just before the pandemics. So During the pandemics, just before I started practicing etching, etching has reinforced a little bit my creative coding skills, because in some ways I can focus on positive and negative space, how it's important for me to trace the trajectories and the paths. So these are some etching related to this project. So working with positive and negative space. But I didn't want that kind of output. I wanted an output related to tapestry or weaving, and I really get inspired by the tapestries of Miro, the Joan Miro, like this one. So the final static is like this, where you can see just lines, but also geometry, dots and lines, and circles, many circles. Okay, so I wanted to explore many things, not just draw things. So inspired by the book of Susan Simard, she talks about the connection between different roots of different trees, of different species. So I wanted to simulate that kind of connections. So this is a simulation of this colonization of the space, and at the end, when the space is colonized, there is a connection between the different species. The sound now is just momentary, it's not finished, but you can have an idea. So I wanted to create a sound really related to the shape of the roots. So I took two approaches when I take account the general shape of a bunch of roots. So for example, here the circle is cutting the roots in different positions. So I match every angle of these intersections with the frequency, with the sound. So depending on how the root grow, a different sound is produced. So here there is no sound, just taking the information from the growth of the root, or the intersections. Another approach in sound was just using individual roots. Now the blue root is the root that is selected. So using the slope of the curve, you can match this slope to a frequency, to a chord, or to a note, a musical note. So here you can see different roots, selecting different roots. So the sound, the extracted from the shape is different. So I developed this tool this summer, and now I'm testing and using to extract music from the shape. Different colonization algorithms produce different roots, so the sound will be different. I can change the number of notes, the number of levels, many different items to produce different notes, chords, and many others. I'm going to play a root. It's not the best root, just a root, short root, so you can see that selecting the different chords, you have a different sound, and different shapes of roots, you have different production. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much to all the people of Punto Raya Festival. It has been an honor to be here and explain a little bit about my work. Thanks to all the people who assisted here. And well, if you have questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.